Hello and welcome to episode 396 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Now today I'm joined by an absolute horror legend. I'm thrilled to announce that I'm joined by Nicholas Vince. You'll know him from the absolutely amazing films Nightbreed and of course Hellraiser. This guy is one of the best out there and genuinely one of my favourite interviews that I've done this year. It's also probably one of my longest interviews I've done this year, and we only just scratched the surface, so I can guarantee that Nicholas will be back in the near future. Now that interview with Nicholas will be coming up in just a couple of minutes' time, but as always, I always like to use the intro for each and every episode of Mark and Me to talk about my last guest. I was joined by Faris Badwan, yes, the singer from The Horrors. A massive thanks to everyone that tuned in and listened to this. I saw a lot of new followers. I've seen so many new people sharing the episodes and liking them. So this is all really appreciated, and I hope you all enjoyed the interview with Faris just as much as I did recording it. And also, I do want to say right now that the numbers have never been so high. My interview with Kat Von D is my most downloaded episode of 2024. So a huge thanks to everyone that's taken the time to follow me, but also the people that watch me on YouTube. Those numbers again have never been so high. So I really do appreciate everyone's time and how much you're investing in Mark and Me. Now today's episode, like I said, is with a legend, Nicholas Vince. And just before I give you that interview, let's give a shout out to the sponsor of the podcast, the incredible Vice Press. Now these guys genuinely for me are the best out there. They have the best posters, the best collectibles, and if you just go on their site, vicepress.com, you will see some incredible stuff that you will want. Right now there's a brand new poster of Dracula by Sarah Deck. There's also The Big Lebowski by Dave O'Flanagan, which is one of my favourite films. Of course, the iconic Jaws done by Andrew Swainson and Matt Ferguson. There's Star Trek, Evil Dead. There's VHSs of stuff like Suspiria. There's loads. And the best thing about all this stuff, if you go on there and enter the code MarkandMe10, you will get 10% off your first order because of this podcast. And that's great for us, and it's great for Vice Press. And I'm so glad that they're partners of the podcast because they really are some of my favourite people out there. And what they do is just unbelievable. Right, now I think it's time to give you the interview with me and Nicholas. So here we both are, talking all things horror. So Nicholas, welcome to the Mark and Me podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on board.
It's absolutely beautiful to have you here today, and I'm sorry you've got a cold off set. We've just talked, so if the listeners are out there saying, he doesn't sound like I thought he does, there's a reason.
There is a reason. Yes.
What I do, Nicholas, with all guests that come on is I always like to take it right back to the start. So I've had actors, directors, photographers, musicians, bands, but I always like to go down nostalgia lane, and I always like to start with where it all started for you within film. And I wondered, as a kid, maybe your parents or a good friend or a trip to the cinema may have been the reason that you fell in love with film. And was there a certain film or that first memory of maybe going to a friend's house or something that made you think, I absolutely love film, I love this experience and I want more?
None of the above.
Nope.
If I think about it and be honest. Okay, so the first film I ever saw in the cinema was a Disney film called Tenderfoot, which I don't think is even on Disney Plus.
I was going to say, I've never even seen that.
It's a cowboy film. And I must have been less than 6 years old. I did find it the other day, not the other day, a few months back. I googled it and I thought, does this film actually exist?
Was it all a dream?
Was it all a dream? Because honestly, I have vivid dreams, and yeah, I have very vivid dreams. And I cannot remember if some incidents are literally a dream or they are memory. I think it's, which is true for many people. So when I first started in acting, it wasn't any intention of going into film. It was all theatre. I literally started my first part was as the third king in the school nativity, and I must have been 6 years old, something like that. And I remember this completely. And I just remember, that we had the paper crowns, brought our dressing gowns from home, and we wore our dressing gowns. And I remember putting my hands together like that, and the teacher saying, "No, just be careful, don't shove your hands in so hard you can't actually get them out again. And they're big enough, just be careful about this." And I was doing my best, walk across, doing my tall and being very regal. I'm being the third king. And then I walked on stage. The first king came on, the second king came on. I walked on, and suddenly there's a shout from the audience of, "Oh, look, there's Nicky." And it was my youngest brother, who, if I was 6 or 7, he must have been 3 or 4 years old. And I was just like, all I remember is that everything stopped. I remember the teacher at the piano just collapsing with laughter. And it's just
How
like,
adorable.
no, really sweet. But it was like, yeah, yeah, that was my first. And then I played, and I'm assuming this must have been the following year, I played Peter Rabbit. And this is all at primary school.
Yeah.
I played Peter Rabbit and Peter Rabbit. And
Well, that's good to get the lead at such a young age.
yeah, absolutely. And I remember the watering can that Peter Rabbit hides in was this large cardboard container. Um, it kind of, sort of, it doubled as the post box to Santa at Christmas, I remember.
Wow.
And I just remember hiding in there, coming out with my cue, and my ears fell off because they were just a cardboard band with ears. But that kind of thing. So, and it must have just been, it wouldn't have been the whole of, I think it must have just been the dramatic bits because Peter hides from Mr. McGregor. They're not long books. But yeah, so those are the very, and that was it. I was completely hooked. So when I got older, around about 11 or so, I joined Horsham Young Players.
Yeah.
Horsham was very cool. Did that, and then started doing county productions. West Sussex County at the time had more amateur dramatic societies than any other country, any other county in the
Yeah.
country. And we had his name was George Rawlins, and he was the head of drama in West Sussex, and it was his job to, I mean, like the fact that a county council had such a position must seem bizarre to anybody these days, where the arts is struggling and all the funding has been cut from local government. But that was George's job. He just went out and he worked with the supporting local societies, and we did county productions. Remember, we did The Devils, the stage version by a gentleman who wrote Day of the Triffids and was made into a film with Oliver Reed and Vanessa Redgrave.
Yeah.
That play, and I just remember doing that. And then of course many of my friends, and we did courses together. We did week-long residential courses where we just did drama classes and put on a show at the end of the week for all our parents and so on. And so I was really lucky. Had this huge community around me. And obviously, people were going to drama school and dance school and so on. And of course, in those days, you didn't have to pay your school fees. So you got a grant. It was a discretionary grant. If you went into a university to study engineering, you automatically got a grant. It was discretionary. So I remember very clearly the interview and being that.
People are going to be listening now thinking this is a different world.
It is completely.
Yeah.
I mean, Americans don't understand any of these
No.
concepts. But my nephews and nieces, who are all now in their 20s and 30s, they wouldn't understand any of these, how this worked at all. So we were so fortunate. I remember talking to a boss when I was working in computers, and he said he thought it was disgraceful that they were charging because the deal was you got your education for free so that you could contribute to society, and that was part of the deal. And that you went, but having had this wonderful education, that allowed you to bring those skills that have been developed at university or whatever back into society. So yes, it wasn't until Clive asked, and when I was at drama school, the whole idea was that you did drama school,
Yeah.
went into repertory theatre. We had weekly repertory back in the 1980s, still, these big rep theatres, and you went and you did that. And if you were really lucky, you got TV. After you'd done TV for a bit, you got into film. Obviously, it just didn't work like that. I did some fringe theatre, and then Clive Barker phoned up one day, just said, "Do you want to be in a movie?"
I mean, we say that as such a throwaway comment, like Clive just rung me and said, "Do you want to be in a film?" But
Yeah.
that must have been. I suppose it's different because you see in hindsight, don't you now, what that really meant.
Mm.
And at the time, if you put yourself in the mindset that you were on that day that phone rung, it probably didn't seem a huge deal because you didn't know what was to come.
Oh no, I mean, I was a huge deal. I do remember doing a happy putting the.
Yeah,
I remember because I got an agent at that stage, and I'd done, as a professional actor, and I mean, I say love, just kind of just went up, but it did come out completely out of the blue,
yeah,
not mentioned doing films. I wasn't aware that he was doing a film. I obviously knew I'd seen his productions of the Dog Company
yeah.
plays with Simon Bramford and Doug Bradley and Oliver Parker. I'd seen those because he happened to live near where my drama school was. So I'd seen all those, but it was a complete shock. And I remember thinking, okay, rather than just saying what, yes, 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 I'm like, no, well, I shall have
I
to
must be
discuss it.
composed. Yeah,
Yes, I shall have to discuss this with my manager. And then putting the phone down and going, yes, yes, yes,
yes,
yes, this
yeah.
is amazing. So I had no idea what was going to be involved, no idea of the effect of this film,
No,
obviously. But the fact that I'd gone from fringe theatre to film in 3 years, effectively, was a huge opportunity.
it's
And
amazing.
yeah, it was extraordinary.
So once Clive calls, obviously personally, and talks to you instead of it being a production company or they
Mm,
actually speak to you, which is such a personal thing,
yes.
makes you this offer, and you say, "Yep, I'm up for this. This sounds great." In the most reserved way possible, without sounding like a excited child that's suddenly got all the pick-a-micks in the world.
Yeah.
You say yes, and you go on to set after looking at the script and everything. Was your mind absolutely blown? Because even today, when I've watched the Arrow 4K versions of these films, they stand the test of time, and the practical effects, as always with John Carpenter and everyone else in the industry, will always, for me, always outlive any CGI or green screen. I absolutely adore the time and dedication that goes into these films. And to see something like Hellraiser now still stand up, I see so many people discovering it for the first time, even now, and no
Yeah.
one ever has a bad word to say. It is a fucking masterpiece, and it must have been unbelievable just to even walk on set for day one and be like, I'm part of this.
It was okay. Which is lovely. And I was, as I mentioned, I think possibly before we started recording last weekend, last Sunday,
Yeah,
I was in Oxford at Cinema Under the Stairs, Shocktoberfest. Um, and it was a 96-seater theatre and it was packed. And we did ask the question at the beginning, who hasn't seen Hellraiser? And at least half, possibly two-thirds of the audience put their hands up.
wow.
And it's just like, and I think I was having this conversation with Doug Bradley last time I was over in the States, and he was saying he reckons Hellraiser is oddly enough more popular now than it's ever been. I do wonder if that is to do with the um, Hulu
Yeah,
Hellraiser and that reawakened interest in it. And I think this is often the case that if somebody says, "Oh, this is a remake or it's based on this film," people often go back to the beginning.
of
And I think,
course.
yeah, so to go back to your question about what was it like on set, well, of course, it was a really unusual process, this. So you're absolutely right. Normally, what you do is recently when I do independent films, I learn my
Yeah,
lines. You talk to the director over the phone about the character. You turn up on the day. If you're really lucky, I can't remember ever actually having rehearsals on any independent film. They don't have time or the money to do it. I know that they were rehearsing for Hellraiser. I know that Ashley and Andrew Robinson and Claire did do a week or so of rehearsals before with Clive before, so that I think just so everyone can get to know each other
yeah,
and so on. But definitely not for the Cenobites. However, for me, it's and the rest of the Cenobites, the experience, of course, starts about 3, 4 months earlier when you go for your life cast, when they put alginate over your face,
yeah,
cover you in plaster and plaster of Paris, and do that whole process. So I got to see, I'd met the guys who were going to do the makeup at least half a dozen, if not more, times before I got anywhere close to the set, and we'd done a makeup test a week or so before we started filming. So it's very different to a normal thing. And of course, the great joke, which I'm mentioning in Iron Monsters, is that because I couldn't really hear, speak, or see when I was in the costume, I had no idea what the set looked like when I looked at it.
Still to this day, you have no idea. Yeah,
I do remember sneaking in and at some point, once we got into filming a bit, and having a look at I call it the torture room, the room at
yeah,
the top of the house where Frank is being reformed.
incredible.
And yeah, and sneaking in to the set. And this was after we'd done, because it was filmed in the production village, but also on location in Dollis Hill, about a
Yeah,
20-minute drive away. Um, and the bottom of the stairs that you see in the film, that's the house. Um, the top of the stairs, that's the house and the studio. So they recreated the top of the stairs in the studio. And I remember looking at them and then thinking, I don't know if I could actually tell them apart. I only know I can make an educated guess as to what was filmed where from the camera angle because it was high up. I do remember the whole set when you walked around the edge of the set. It was about shoulder height. So it's quite a way off so that they could
yeah.
get stuff coming through the floor and just and well actually just so that they could do the staircase practically and leading up to the landing. So I did get that experience of actually, but of course I didn't the first film I didn't actually really get to meet the sound guy I did get to meet Robin Vigeon and so
Yeah.
who they were, etc. But you didn't. It was always hanging out with the makeup and costume people. Um, so you were kind of because we arrived a lot earlier than well, the others had to arrive a lot earlier than everyone else, but because I was living in Horsham in Sussex rather than London, I knew the makeup guys really well by this stage. I was sleeping on their couch
Yeah.
just so that we could get either Jeff Portis and Roy Puddifoot or Jane Wildgoose at her home up in Crouch End. Um, and that meant going in with them, which is fine because it was exciting for me because I could watch all this makeup process happening, which is really
It must be
fascinating.
fascinating. Yeah, I
Oh,
couldn't even imagine.
I have been known to give smart aleck answers about how long does it take to put the makeup, and I am not knocking anybody who ever asks me that question. I deeply respect that I may have heard it hundreds of times, but you've literally just met me. You may have been queuing for a while before you met me. And it's a kind of a conversation opener. And I get that. Um, and I think it's the conversation opener that people ask the most
Yeah.
guests at a convention. Um, what who appeared under makeup? How long was the process, and so on. And expect them expecting to hear 3 hours or 4. So yeah, it took about 3 months because that is the whole process from the beginning to end.
When you finally get to see the final cut of the film and obviously attend the first screenings and stuff, because you'd been kind of in a mask for so long and
Mm,
hidden and kind of isolated, you're not in with the crowd and the mix for everything, are you? You're kind of in a different situation than the rest of the cast. I wondered, could you take yourself back to that day that you first saw that finished product and the kind of seeing how all of the work, the determination and the magic comes together and kind of
very straight. Yeah,
was it just is it hard to describe those feelings of how it all was projected for you and you were just like, wow, this is the story, this is how it all those days, all that sweat, all that blood, all those tears, everything comes together and it's all worth it.
really interesting question because of course Hellraiser didn't have a premiere. It's as far as I'm aware, it didn't have a cast and crew screening. It just went into theaters. It just went
So there
into
was
cinema.
no actual
No,
chance for you. Oh,
no.
wow.
So I saw it with my oldest friends, Chris and Sue. My youngest brother was available, but I'm sure Laurie was there. I think Laurie was there. The one who shouted out, "Who looked very." Um, and my mum and dad were there. And so we just did this. I organized it and we got them together. And I believe we may have had tea or something or a drinks beforehand at the Cafe Royale near Piccadilly Circus. And then it must have been in Leicester Square that we saw it. Um, it must have been fairly near there. I must have chosen that for.
How lovely though with your family.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So
that's
when I saw it, it's not a film. It's not a experience of watching a fictional storytelling. For me, it was like, oh yeah, I remember. Oh yeah, I know where that was shot.
yeah.
I remember that day.
So it's lots of
Yeah,
bits of a jigsaw.
yeah, it's just kind of like it took me at least 10 years before. And that was because obviously in those days, I mean, I did get the VHS when it came out, but it was Cinema Club and it was really poor quality VHS that they put out. Um, so I remember watching that, and it was like at the end of the screening, because I was sitting next to Mum, and she kept on giggling, and I thought, oh, you've got a similar sense of humor to you're seeing the absurdity of this. You're not taking it seriously. You're suspending your disbelief. She wasn't laughing unkindly. I asked her at the end, what did you think? And she just said, oh, it was very silly, dear.
That should be on the poster.
It
Very
should, yeah.
silly, dear.
Nick's mum, yeah.
Yeah.
It was very silly, dear. Um, I do remember I did fess up to Clive because he met my parents and he got on well with them. Um, and it was just like, yeah, it, I remember, I do remember kind of sitting and thinking, oh, people have just jumped at this bit. Oh, that bit obviously worked. So yes, it's a very unusual experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, very different to what you might expect.
Is it difficult because when you're growing up, and obviously I don't know your whole background with your family and how your parents were supportive or not, but when I speak to a lot of musicians or people that were getting into the business, to turn round to your parents and say, I want to be an actor, or I want to be a musician, or I want to be the next Kurt Cobain, or, John Lennon, or, in film terms, it could be Leonardo DiCaprio now when I speak to young actors. A parent could have that as their biggest nightmare because they think, oh my God, like that's such a hard world to get into. You need to stand above the rest. You need to make a name for yourself. I would prefer, son, could you just go and get a real job and then hopefully do something as a hobby that might be more? Or were your
Yes.
parents on board from day one and like, Nicholas, we know what you want. We believe in you. We are fully going to back you to the moon and back.
They were very practical.
Yeah.
The deal was if I got a proper job
Yeah.
for a year, um, if at the end of the year I still wanted to do it, then it was fine. They would
I love that.
support me. It was just like,
Yeah.
and what they really recommend, and it was very useful because it meant I worked in offices. I was already a fairly good typist. I think I had at least 60 words a minute as a typist.
Yeah.
Um, so I knew I could temp. So the understanding was you're not going to earn a living as an actor, but you can earn a living as temp. So why not make sure? And I've done temping in around the town and so on. I mean, when we actually physically made Hellraiser, I was also working at the Arts Centre in Horsham. I was working as a front of house manager. Um, was I working, or I may have been doing marketing. Eventually on to do arts marketing,
I see.
and in fact, once was employed as a consultant because I was the marketing manager at Horsham Arts Centre, and up the road in Crawley, they'd opened up the Horth Theatre, and they brought me in for a week to chat with the team and make suggestions as to how they could market their pantomime because I've been very responsive and I was good.
Yeah, but you
I
had a hands-on experience, didn't you?
I had
And
hands-on
yeah,
experience. Right? It was like I remember and it's a completely different world now. But you, in those days, you had if you're at a small theatre, ours is a touring theatre in Horsham, i.e., we had different shows each week. A season would be about 3 months. My boss would put together the season, and then it was up to me to contact all the production companies and get all the headshots and get the press releases and so on. And I remember okay, I have no idea what I'm doing because I had no experience when I started. It's my usual thing. It's just kind of like, oh, can
see how
I?
it goes.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
just like, it was. I mean, I before I got that, I mean, I had been working. I started in the box office. I started as a volunteer um, usher, and then I got employed as box office staff, and then I was kind of managing front of house. And I got paid. It was all part-time work, and then this opportunity came up to do marketing, and they must have just asked me. I didn't have to interview or anything. I said, yeah, sure, I've got some ideas. And I think how those days it really was your mailing list was a physical mailing list. And I think I'd done some research. This is before the internet. And again, the county counts, there was a conglomeration, it was either a charity, there was some sort of
yeah,
organization that shared theatre marketing. And I remember going on a course, and it's like, okay, this actually all kind of makes for logical. You need to be able to produce leaflets. You ought to be able to do this. I thought, okay, in terms of press, there was one reporter who was responsible for the West Sussex County Times came out on a Friday, all the listings, articles, which famous TV star is going to be in the theatre this week. And I just took them out for lunch and I said, what do you need from me? What will make your life easiest? And they said, well, ideally, what we'd like to do is just go to a filing cabinet at the beginning of the week, pull out all the information we need, which would be a press release, the headshots, and so on. And then we can just copy and it just goes in the paper. We don't need to write anything. It just goes in the paper. And it is like, yeah, okay. I mean, do remember I did actually end up by writing a small part of a press release, and it ended in the paper. And I literally mean a paragraph or two. And the next time I spoke to Clive, I said, "I'm now a published author."
I love that.
He was very good with me. He said, "Yes, Nick, well done." And it's like I know it's only a paragraph, but it means I feel I can say I'm a public author. It'd be years before I actually went on to publish books. But yeah, I do remember that very clearly.
I think a lot of my listeners that have followed me on this journey would crucify me if I didn't talk about Nightbreed with you. I've
Thank you.
mentioned Arrow today because Arrow Video have brought, I think, to today's generation some real classics, and they've spent so much time and so much love and thought into their releases, and to give people stuff like Basket Case now and Nightbreed and Hellraiser and all these great horrors that I don't believe people would discover without a company like this and a distribution
Mm,
going out there to the masses. And because they put so much time into the artwork and all the extras, I think I loved the fact that they went and gave us Nightbreed, and I saw so many people at horror conventions and Fright Fest discovering it because, the film's made in 1990, but it's, you know, God, 30 years later, people are then going, oh my God, I've just discovered this film. It's absolutely brilliant. And it must have been amazing to work with Clive again. And I still put Nightbreed in probably my top 10 horrors of all time. I think it's
oh,
unbelievable.
wonderful.
I
Thank
do.
you.
I love it.
Thank you. It is interesting. I mean, it was a tough shoot.
Yeah.
Um, it was more challenging than Hellraiser. I mean, Hellraiser was challenging because of the restrictions of the costume,
Yeah. Of course.
which kind of created the performance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really didn't have to do that, but I got um I remember there was one moment that was I just cringe every time I think about it. So when Kinski comes up behind Boone and puts the knife,
Yeah.
move knife, slit your throat, I kept on dropping my elbow because I thought I need to hold him. I need to hold him in place. I
He's got to be
tried
in
to,
position. Yeah.
yeah, I've got to keep him. I've got to make sure he doesn't move. And Clever was pointing out, you've got a knife at his throat. It's far more power. And I just kept on dropping this elbow. I remember him just gently lifting the elbow out the way. It's like, oh, idiot. And then I thought I'd known better than the instructions. I got a lot. I think I got a lot of stuff wrong. I really did get a lot of stuff wrong on that. So I also got a lot of stuff right. And I think it is an amazing film, and it's a
I think it's so unique. So some people might say to me, that's not the best horror. There's so many better films. But I think there's not many other films like Nightbreed.
no, where the monsters are the good guys,
There you
which
go.
just completely blew the way. That I think the reason that Nightbreed didn't do so well is because the marketing department didn't know how to do it. They were used to doing stalk and slash films, which in fact the producers felt exactly the same way. This is why Decker was given more in the original cut.
Yeah.
He's set up as being the stalk and slash villain that might go on if anything goes on. Whereas I think because they just couldn't understand. I remember they just couldn't understand the idea that the monsters are the good guys. I know this because Clive has gone into print saying his conversations with marketing department where you've got to be careful, otherwise people are going to have sympathy for the monsters. Like, well, duh. Um, and it's like the whole idea that
Yeah.
the monsters are the humans, and I think I can't remember the detective character's name because I'm thinking through a cold. he even says it has a line about saying, who really are the monsters here? All they want to
Yeah,
do is to live in peace. The first poster is Laurie thought she knew her boyfriend. Laurie was wrong.
I love that.
And then eventually there's somebody comes on and thought, hold on, we've got all these weird, wonderful characters. And I'm very pleased to say that Kinski is one of those
Unbelievable.
who ended up on the poster or the Blu-ray cover or DVD.
Yeah,
Or the VHS cover originally. Um,
iconic. So good.
yeah, and it's just kind of like it is complete. But this is the trouble when you're the head of the game is that nobody knows how to market it because you're trying to find a new audience, and it's I think it's really hard. For having worked in arts marketing, I understand the pressures. I understand the way it works because and I also understand it from the producer's point of view. It's like just give me more of the same but different, and
It's a difficult one as well because of and I'm not saying a twist because it's just different, and it was kind of one of the first where you thought, okay, it's not the normal formula of the slasher and the good
yeah.
guys are the good guys and the bad guys are the bad guys. But I kind of thought to myself, you don't want to give away. The magician doesn't want to give away how the trick's
Mm,
done, but at the
yeah.
same time, I know you need to get people to watch your, in this case, film, but like you want people to watch your magic trick. But I think the fact that people don't know is what makes it so magical until you're
Yeah.
watching it. And I think I'm glad the poster's not like the good guys are the bad guys. I'm
Yeah.
so glad it was
Yes. Yes.
now
And
now
that's what,
now it'd be a
yes.
TikTok saying the whole spoiler
Yes.
and you'd know the
Yes. Because
whole premise.
you would, you're quite right. I've not thought about this before. You would simply be sitting there waiting for the monsters because they're on
Exactly.
the poster.
Yeah.
Um, you're waiting. Well, they don't appear until kind of a third of the way through the movie. You're a good 20 minutes in before I think
At least yeah.
at least before you meet Narcisse and you hear about Midian and that whole mystery thing. I mean, this is the
I'm now going to watch this as soon as this interview's over. I'm like, right, I had a whole day's work, but I'm like, no, we've now I've juiced me up now. I can't, I've got so much to do, but I'm like, I want to watch this now.
just watch Nightbreed again. I can completely understand. I think if you can watch the director's cut, I do think it's better than the
Oh yeah, and the problem
original.
is because I see it at the moment, everyone's doing these 31 days of horror challenges where you try and watch a different horror every day. I don't believe everyone sticks to it and they just post it up to try and look like they've got this vast collection of films. I don't think anyone can commit to it, but I'm like, tonight I am definitely now going to get out Nightbreed Director's Cut and just sit and watch it because what other day can you say you've done an interview and then you can watch it?
You can actually watch it afterwards.
Yeah,
Yeah, and come back to Arrow for a moment. I completely agree with you about the quality and um, the effort they put into it because they actually, with Nightbreed,
wonderful.
they actually took an American release, I think, possibly from Shudder. Can't know, maybe not. Anyway, I have
No,
a vague recollection.
I think it was something. Yeah, I
Shot
think
or Shut. So
I know
I
what you
can't
mean.
remember who it
Yeah,
was. And then they added, because they added an interview with me because I'd missed the chance to do the interviews when they did the original. So Arrow
yeah.
got me in to do an interview. So my interviews looked very different to the rest. This is why I have a standalone interview on this one. I love and going back to Hellraiser for the moment, I am so honored that when they did their Quartet of Torment, the first four Hellraiser films, they did a special edition that features Chatterer.
Yeah.
And I looked at this, the quality of the work. Cutting cardboard is really difficult, particularly when it's fairly clear, and to actually get it so accurate that you can see exactly the right part of the artwork underneath and so on. I was blown away when I actually saw that. And I have to say, and I'm terribly grateful. Something I've not had a chance to discuss with everyone. I'm sorry, moving back away from library, but we can come
No,
back.
no, of course.
Was what people had been asking me about the Hulu film, and I said, listen, I ended up by writing comics, Hellraiser comics,
Yeah,
and it is very hard if that is you've got something based on Hellraiser. It is very hard to write a Hellraiser story which isn't somebody gets hold of a puzzle box, they open it, the Cenobites arrive.
yeah.
That's making it something other. And I was, it was short stories, and I'm really proud of a few of those short stories. In fact, all of them. I really love all of the ones my work on that, but also everybody else's. Um, it wasn't Dave McKean in the first episode, in the first issue of the Hellraiser comic. There is a comic strip without words, no dialogue, called Simply Fetus. Ted McKeever.
I've not heard of this.
It is brilliant. That doesn't have a box, doesn't have any Cenobites, but it's really horrific.
And no dialogue or words at
No,
all,
no
just
dialogue of
all
it.
image.
It is all images,
Wow.
which to me is one of the joys
Like
of
pure
comic.
power, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a pure, the medium where you can actually get rid of all the dialogue and actually just do, again, no criticism of comics that have dialogue, but actually just tell stories. And in fact, and I think possibly I was influenced in this view by a book called God's Man. I'm going to hate myself. It'll come to me from the 1930s, which I think is like 160 woodcuts, which is, and it is literally the story about. They're beautiful. Lind Ward is the artist.
Yes, I've seen that
L-Y-N.
artwork. Yeah, it's
Yes, and
got
it's
this like face on it with like these really weird eyes.
yes, and
Yeah.
yes. If you ever get, and I've got copies of it. They've done reprints now, and he's amazing. And he did a whole series of these where he tells stories with no dialogue whatsoever. And he's literally, and with the original, I remember my art school teacher bringing this in when I was like 16, 17 years old. And I thought, and he brought in a copy of it, must have been from the 1920s, 30s, or whenever it was originally published. It was one of the originals. And he said, just wanted to show it to us, and he just read it. It doesn't take long to read because there's no dialogue. Isn't this amazing? And I'm going to I just want to get all the panels out and just line them up next to each other as you walk around and put them on the walls so that everyone can, the maximum number of people can see this. Which is inspiration. I thought, I get that. I remember at the time thinking, I get that. I really hope you don't, because there is something magical about turning a page and an image being reviewed.
Well, I was going to say for the first time, it's that kind of it's not knowing, is it?
No, yes, it
Yeah,
comes. I avoid trailers for films
I
as
do my
much as I
best, but when
possibly
I'm in
can.
the cinema and it's like, this is the film you've been waiting for 2 years, and this is the whole plot and the ending and everything, and I'm
Yes,
like, oh great, well,
yeah.
I might
Why
not
am I
bother now.
bothering to see this?
Yeah,
Yes, which is like people want more confidence before they'll shell out. They want to know that
it's
they're
too
going.
much. Yeah,
It's yeah, but as you say, the mystery is in the reveal.
it is.
I remember, as I say, when I wrote comics, I didn't just write Hellraiser and Nightbreed comics. I wrote for Marvel UK, subsidiary of Marvel in the US. And I wrote a title called Warheads, which in the US was a monthly title, but in the UK was part of a weekly comic, because that's how we consume comics in the UK in those days, is a weekly comic. So yeah, I think it was called Overkill. I've got the name Overkill in my mind. So you had Overkill, the Beano, the Dandy, etc. in the UK, which is great. But what that meant as the writer is I had to get my head around the fact that we'd have 6 pages and 5 pages because it had to come to 22, the American.
Yeah,
So each section had to have a cliffhanger. and a reason to turn the page. And I remember basically I set up a grid on an A4 piece of paper that showed me for the American, because the adverts were always on the same place. So you have front cover. You open the front cover, on the left-hand side, you have Marvel's letter from Stan Lee
Yeah.
or that's something similar. And you have the first page of the comic, and that's usually a splash page. And then you turn it, and then you'll probably have a couple of pages. And then you turn it. If you look to the left, you're going to be presented with um, adverts. And on the opposite page, there will be another set of images. So it was really important to me that I knew what you were going to see when you turn the page. You need to want to turn the page at the bottom right. You have to have a cliffhanger for every single page. You've got the action has to flow over the page. And then you have to make sure that the reveal if you are going to reveal something, it's at top left, if it's on that page, or it's at the top of the page and I was thinking about this the other day. So I think this is wonderful training for writing, but in short form fiction, particularly because I do plot, even short stories, I plot. I have some sort of idea what the story is about and the incidents that are going to, and I will write that out and then just keep on expanding those. Um, so yeah, but coming back to Nightbreed, as I have mixed feelings about the film entirely, the stuff that I was going through, but the film it was an extraordinary experience because I could see what was going on. I could walk onto set and see that there are the cameras. There's the electric. There's Clive. There is this amazing set, Midian. It's 3 stories tall. And you can actually walk up into the back and walk across these ropeways. And so this is extraordinary. So I think that moment you asked me about in Hellraiser didn't happen in Hellraiser, but certainly happened
Yeah.
on Nightbreed. Certainly happened on the set of Nightbreed. I know, I told the story on Sunday. There was the moment where the sound guy came up to me on Nightbreed, and I was in my full Kinski crescent moon face makeup, and he said, "I just want to introduce myself. My name is John Midgley. I'm the sound engineer, and this is how we're going to be miking to you. So I need you to keep talk in this direction, etc." Said, "John, we've made 2 films together already. We did Hellraiser and Hellbound." But of course, he seldom saw me out of makeup if at all. So
I
there
love
was,
that.
you know, there is, and that is one of the joy they talk about on the original black and white version of Nosferatu, that the rumor went by that the actor was a real vampire because nobody ever saw him out at Klaus Kinski. Nobody ever saw him out of makeup. Well, no, because he was there with the makeup artists at least 3, 4 hours before anybody else arrived. So when he walked onto set, he was fully unrecognized.
Yeah.
So I understand, and Doug has spoken of similar experiences that people just don't know how you are, who you are, because they're there. They'll only have been, may only have started, depending on the department, may only have started working on it, and it's in the either day 1 of filming or a few days before. So yeah, very interesting
I've
experience.
just sat here now and written God's Man, Lind Ward, because I'm going to have to treat myself to that at the end of today.
It comes as part of there's a 2 volume set,
Yeah.
hardcovers and slipcovers, and it's his work is amazing.
Yeah.
Lind Ward is, apart from Clive, obviously, is my favorite artist.
He did was it Vertigo?
He did do Vertigo.
Yes.
I mean, there was it's interesting. He wasn't the only artist and publisher doing this kind of thing. There are other woodblock artists.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them, funnily enough, a lot of them are very socialist in tone. Um, God's Man is very much about art versus commercialism.
I need to do it justice, I think. I think just buying a cheap Amazon paperback is not going to do this justice, but I also don't want my wife to come home today and be like, I've spent £600 on a beautiful hardback
I don't
limited.
think it's going to be, it may be 60, but
Yeah.
it will be more reasonable than that. But I think Lindward is,
Yeah.
there is a documentary out there apparently, which I've never been able to see because I don't think it's ever gone online. I've only ever been able to find a trailer
Right.
for it. And I would love to see the full documentary about his life because it must be fascinating. It's because obviously it's just black and white. Though one of the stories, he interchanged the ink from black to red. Another one of his tales. They tend to be journeys, the stories,
Yeah.
and somebody exploring stuff and so on. And God's Man, you just start with the artist being washed up on a seashore and then follow his journey.
I'm going to treat myself already. I'm like, I need this, but I don't. Like I said, it needs to be the right. I need to get one that does
Yeah.
it justice. I don't want a cheap. His work needs to be respected, so I just need to make
Yes.
sure I get the right one.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely on Amazon. I got it from Amazon a few years back.
Yeah.
When I was written, I got a whole load of other.
And now I want to find the documentary and send it you, so I can be like, there you go.
Just perhaps it doesn't come in a slipcover. I think one of them may come in a slipcover. This is my
Oh
copy.
wow! Look at
Um,
that.
Madman's Drum is really interesting as well. And Wild Pilgrim, you'll see there are a whole load of little things in it because these are my favorite images that I find the most.
Look at that. That's
It's
what I need.
beautiful.
That.
Oh, it's edited by Art Spiegelman, is the guy who wrote and created Maus, Maus, which is one of the comics in the 1980s that really promoted the graphic novel as a serious form of art. And Art Spiegelman did this book, which is all about his family history during the Second World War. And the Jews are mice, and the cats are the Nazis. And that's
Well, this interview's just cost me about £70, but it's not worth it. In return, what I have just done for you is I just on the off chance just typed in documentary, and it's called Oh Brother Man.
Yes.
The Art and Life, and on 217films.com right now you can watch it for free.
Oh wow!
So there's my return favour for you.
217 Films,
and it's 1.5 hours. Yeah, it's 2 and then 17films.com. So TWO17films.com, and it's streaming on there for free.
I can get so happy. Oh Brother Man, The Art and Life of Lindward.
And you hit play, look, and it's there ready to go.
Oh, you are my hero.
How's that?
You are my hero.
I mean, you might be late now, miss your plane and not pack and all this, but at least you can now get to...
There is no confidence whatsoever whether or not I am leaving tomorrow or Thursday, the way things are at the moment. I just thought, you mean I'm going to have to pack, believing I might leave tomorrow, but possibly not leave until Thursday. How do I manage this?
Well, we now have a 2.5 hour podcast where we'll both sit for 95 minutes now and do a live reaction of watching Oh Brother Man. Well, I do want to get on to, and I have made a note, and I'll watch this documentary, and I think this might become my new obsession now, and I'll end up buying all of his work and all the nice hardback editions like you've got, and this will be brilliant. So I've got something to take away. But what I do want to mention is I Am Monsters, which is your own collection, which is your one-man show, which I think any horror fan, anyone that loves Hellraiser, Nightbreed, all the different stuff between London Horror Festival and everything else that goes in between, this is your kind of... This is yours, isn't it? This is your baby.
this is me ripping out my beating heart
Yeah,
and offering it to you. There's nowhere to hide
no,
on this whatsoever. In fact, I wrote to Greg Day from Clout PR and
yeah,
said because Paul Smith, who's also worked, Paul's handling the LGBTQ um, stuff, and he said, "Here's a nice review with a link." And of course, I'm reading the link. Click on it. I'm just scanning. I can't. If there is any criticism in this whatsoever, I'll die. I will just die. I'll never want to leave my bedroom ever again because I'm such a sensitive flower. And I just, because I was in the car, we were away for the weekend. I was driving back and I was like, I can't deal with this. All that said, it was a lovely review. And I'm and everything I've that's happened in terms of screenings and people's reaction has been wonderful. Has been so kind. So
this is lovely when we live in such a world full of trolls that want to take down stuff before it's even had its time or day. I think we are our own worst critics at time, and I think you're probably like me. You would take to heart one comment that could be
yeah,
"This is terrible" over 1,000 that say it's a work of art. So
yeah.
to know that kind of reassures me that the world is better than I believed because I'm sick of seeing people tear to pieces something. Just it's this culture at the moment of just not even giving anything a chance. That's the worst film I've ever seen. Have you seen it? Not yet, but I know it is. And I'm like, let's be kinder. Let's be nicer. Let's celebrate that people are being creative.
I I have the word. I have the name Goethe in my mind for this quote, but I could easily be wrong, and I'm going to mash up the quote because I read it years ago. Actually, there's two quotes about criticism, which I was the first one. I probably read them around about the same time because I probably picked up a book of quotations later. But one is a critic's job is to assess what the artist was trying to say and then write about how successfully they've done it. That's what criticism
Yeah,
is. Um, I think, and the other one, which I thought is brilliant. You're never as good and you're never as bad as the critics say, or people say. You're never, and also I do deeply respect people. I don't want to shut down if people want to ask me questions about something and saying like, why did you do it this way? I'll happily talk to them.
yeah,
And why did you include this? Or wouldn't it have been better if? And I can probably, I don't mind having that kind of conversation with people. Mostly the feedback has been really interesting, has been how much it's touched people's lives, how good
yeah.
it is, how much, and every screening I've done, people have been really enthusiastic in terms of their applause. And they've talked to me afterwards. I did a screening in Belgium at a festival called Razor Reel. And it's not just because of I Am Monsters. I'm hugely grateful and acknowledge the power of the Hellraiser and Chatterer in my life. Yeah, there's a story I meant to tell you. And but they said at the end of the organizers said that, wow, we've never had people queue to get your signature so much, but also actually just sit down quietly during the interview and listen. So normally people just have their normal conversations, and whoever's at the front is just chatting.
Yeah.
And there's going to be anybody who really isn't interested, be a few rows, but they said everyone just stopped and chatted to you. I was like, well, that's lovely. That's really, really nice. So I think I'm really pleased to hear you say, and as I say, I am blown away by
Yeah.
how much people have been supporting the film in terms of purchasing, but also, saying nice things about it.
Also, the correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a limited edition set, and it's got absolutely everything. It's got the lobby cards and
Yes,
the amazing artwork. Is it Graham Humphreys?
it is Graham Humphrey.
Yes, which is
It's
brilliant.
isn't it wonder? I mean, it's really lovely, and this is all through Fright Fest. All these connections.
Yeah.
I again somewhere else that I have to be owe huge acknowledgement because of the Fright Fest community of filmmakers. Um, and talking to other film directors who've screened there is
Well,
just
Alan came on only a couple of episodes ago as well, so we had a really big chat about his new book and all his reviews, and what an amazing character, what an amazing life he's lived.
oh yes, and it's interesting. I've known Alan since we did Hellraiser,
Yeah,
um, but not kept in touch until about 2012, when I kind of I'd gone into computers because I had to, and all my comics folded, and I was 12
yeah.
grand in debt. Um, one of the things I thought I need to start going to Fright. I've been to the early. I didn't go to the first Fright Fest, but I went to Shock Around the Clock,
Yeah,
24 hour, a couple of those, um, back in the day. So I knew who Paul was, I knew who Alan was, and so on. Kind of met Ian and Greg later on. Um, but yeah, they're Alan's wonderful. He
amazing. The stories and the things he's seen and the things he's
what
witnessed,
he's
I'm like,
done,
it's
and
just, it blows my mind.
it does me, and he's wonderful, and I love him.
Yeah.
And uh, this is like, oh God, Alan's going to talk to me about my film. I think he hasn't seen it. So I think the words he said to me when I first saw him, because it premiered at Fright Fest, and I saw him at
Yeah.
Great, Nick, how are you doing? How's your little documentary? And I thought, yeah, that's fine, that's okay. And then he said, no, no, I really wish you luck with it. He said, Alan will, Alan is so clear about what he likes and what he doesn't like. Um, and our tastes are completely different, completely different. So when Alan recommends me something, it's like, I don't like this. Okay, I'll give it a try. It's you. You know what you're talking about. I'll give you a go. It's complete,
Yeah.
but it's just like,
I never want him to review my podcast because he'd be so honest. I think I'd quit. He might be like, "This is the worst piece of shit I've ever heard,"
I don't.
but I can see why people like it, and I'd be like, "Wow, I don't know how to take it."
Everyone trusts, and it's like Kim Newman. Everyone trusts
Yeah,
Newman because he will. We
there's no
don't use.
sugarcoating, and
There's no
there's no
sugarcoating
paid
in it.
5-star reviews there.
No, the reason I laugh so hilariously when I mention Kim Newman, the review that he wrote is not used in the quotes, but I do love it. It's like he said, "I Am Monsters" is like being trapped with Nick Vince in a lift for 1 hour 10 minutes.
Wow, thanks, Kim.
Yes, Kim.
Yeah, that one
Yes,
won't be
Kim.
on the front, but
No,
yeah,
that one won't be on the. It won't be on the cover. I found some much more positively phrased interviews. So yeah, it was a real labor. I mean, going back to I Am Monsters, and
yeah, it's
you're absolutely right. It is 500.
beautiful, absolutely
Oh
incredible.
yes, it's extraordinary. Oh, no, what I was going to say was not just before I did my usual wander off. Let's come back to the artists. I was also lucky to be able to get Ashley Thorpe involved,
Yeah,
who is the most amazing animator. Because I've done Ball Erectory with him. In fact, we did. I voiced a few lines on his Hairy Hands short film. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
again, I'm sitting here now writing down
Yeah,
more. I've
it's on
got
his
homework.
website.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ashley Thorpe. They're all short because he uses rotoscope.
Oh
This
wow.
stuff
Okay.
takes his
Yeah. Forever.
forever, and he is so painstaking. He's so amazing, and I knew we were going to do some animation. And I worked out how much I could afford to ask him to do, and it's like I really want him to do the Dracula, because I think this would be really interesting for rather than just watching me telling a story and recording quite a long excerpt. But he designed the logo, and so is extraordinary, extraordinarily talented. So I was very lucky to get both Graham Humphreys, who I've admired for so many years.
I've got
Um,
some of his Evil Dead posters and stuff, and I can, and I say this with respect, 'cause I think you need to build up your profile and work and kind of win that approval. But when I see a piece of his work now, I can instantly say, I think that might be Graham.
yes,
He's got that style, he's got that originality, and I think his pieces are just amazing. Like I get lost in them. I look at the detail and you think that's good. Then you kind of look at it a bit longer and you keep staring like the sky at night and seeing more stars.
yes,
And I'm like, oh my god, look at that in the shading of the beard or the forehead.
yes.
I'm like, oh my god, like
And I love it because I'd given him the brief was, can you produce a poster for me? Um, it's obviously got to feature me, but I also need it to feature Chatterer
yeah.
and the Berserker. And I thought, how you, because I could immediately your mind goes to a kind of a diamond shape. Um, but you've got, and of course, there's Chatterer too as well. Um, I need to look over my shoulder just to remind myself. Yes, we do have chat. We have both versions of the Chatterer. That's right. So you've got 5 images. If I
Yeah.
just asked for Chatterer, Kinski, and Berserker, that might have been easier, but I didn't. I asked for um, all 4 of them, both versions of Chatterer, and I thought, how are you going to come up? I just thought, well, now I see it. It's so obvious, and I love the fact that the claw of the Berserker is coming over
It's
my
over your
shoulder.
shoulder, isn't it?
It's over my
Yeah.
shoulder. Yeah, it's over my shoulder, and it's just like, yeah, that's genius
And
because it.
I think some of the heads above you are kind of, I think it's on the limited edition set. It's kind of like popping out of the kind of
Yes,
frame.
yes. No,
Yeah,
this
I
is this
love
is
that.
this is funnily enough. This is Stuart Spark from
Yeah.
Dark Rift, who designed the covers for the slipcover. Because obviously, if we're talking about Iron Monsters, I really do have to give huge shout outs to Stuart Spark and Paul Butler from Dark Rift, who agreed to take this on as co-producers and distributors as well. Because I always knew that what I wanted to do was to go with a smaller distributor. I
Yeah.
didn't want it to be part of, oh yeah, it's this week's release. And I think you now
It
have
would just get
people,
lost, wouldn't it?
it
People
just,
blink and you miss it.
yeah, and people don't, and it's like they've built up a community, and this is, I'm so proud of people like um, what they've achieved, like Laurie Brewster at Hex Media
Yeah.
for for all their limited, their editions and their beautiful stuff and the care that Laurie takes on that. Liam Regan is now redistributing Troma over here. And again, that's just kind of like, oh wow, this stuff is going to be so good. This is going to be really, really good.
Second Sight as well. Their releases,
Yes.
they've just done the Hitcher, and I'm like, oh my god, like that
I don't
has
know. I don't
finally got the attention it deserves. It's incredible.
because they screened it at
Oh, Fright Fest, didn't they? The
yeah, they
4K.
did screen it.
Yeah.
I you see this is those wonderful moments where head cold aside, I do meet so many people, and I can't place absolutely everybody. Who is behind Second Sight?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know that I am very skint most months recently because they've done all my favorite films and all the rare stuff as well. So they've done like Lake Mungo and all those really obscure, they're
And
giving Neil
again, Lake
Marshall's
Mungo is something I really wanted to see. So yeah,
Dog Soldiers for Neil Marshall. They've done so much like time and care into their releases, but each one is brilliant. It's wonderful to see. It's so
yeah,
good.
yeah, and this seems to be something that's happening recently. People are realizing streaming is really convenient because when I've been telling people about yeah. It was originally I thought it was going to come out in spring last year, And then it got pushed to summer, and we're now in autumn. And there are very good reasons. The delays a lot on my side for actually getting all the things together. Um, People, a lot. I was surprised at the number of people said, "So where can I see it online?" And I think, well, you can't, and I really don't want you to watch it online.
No.
Because I want to make some money, have some of my money back. But I really think something physical you have in your hand and can keep or give as a gift or
It takes me back to the
pass
album
on.
days. Yeah, it's like the album days. I know there's a resurgence now in vinyl, but I love that because you finally get to see the lyrics being written out. You get to see the band's photography. You get to see the beautiful artwork. The journey an album takes you on is not just for your ears. And I will sit down a band like Radiohead and I'll go through all the artwork and the choices that the band have made and why they've chosen that image of the band to kind of be at that moment for the band's career. And it's not just a generic photo of the band standing at a train station. It's something that's entwined with the artwork, and I lose myself in it. And I can't sit and just go on, I don't know, Netflix or Amazon Prime and just hit play. I want to smell the packaging. I want to
Yeah,
read the booklet. I want to see the postcards. I want to see the artwork choices.
yes, and there's an article in the New Yorker about. Oh no, sorry, it wasn't in the New Yorker at all. It was on the YouTube. Somebody moving from one e-reader to another, Kobe to Kindle, I think, something like that. Who actually owns the ebook? And I thought, well, yeah, and it's like when you buy a film from Amazon, you only get to own it for as long as you've got a subscription
Yeah.
going,
Or they decide to take it off,
or they decide to take it off.
and then you're lost without it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just gonna close the door because Bertie.
It's usually my dog. I've got two dogs. I've got a 17-year-old Yorkshire Terrier called Florence and a Jack Russell who's 16, and they are very chilled now in their later days. But normally, when I've got an interview, I'll be thinking, this is going too well, everything's going well, and then suddenly Amazon knock the door or something triggers it, and I've honestly, the amount of magical editing I've had to do to basically hide the fact that there's dogs kicking off in the background is an art.
Yes, well, the reason he's got so excited is because Craig obviously has forgotten to give him his rubber ball, which goes in his gub normally, because his dog, his walker, has just come round to pick up the keys
Amazing.
a couple of days, and he loves her, and she loves him, and which is all fine and dandy. But he's now 13 years old, and the age he is now, he just he's a grumpy old
A
man.
life of naps, yeah.
Yes, a lot of that, and going to the vet and being spoiled rotten by the vet because he knows where the treats are kept,
Yeah.
and he will keep on going back into the room. It's like when we got there, the door, all the staff, because I was running late because trying to sort out flight details, they were all happened to be sitting outside the consulting room. But he just acknowledged, kind of looked at them, and then headed straight into the consulting room. And just because he knew where the treats are, and
Yeah.
it's like, and then when we were talking afterwards, it's just like they didn't have anybody else in, and it's just like he was wandering back into the consulting room to sit on his behind, looking at the treats. Because in his mind, if he sits down, then he deserves a treat. But yes, sorry,
What I've
the
got for
door's
you
closed.
today, yeah, Nicholas, my final question, and I do this with everyone that's been on the podcast
Mm,
since the start. I'm going to put you on the spot, but it's always an interesting one because every answer's been different. And what I do at the very end of every episode to make it as original as I can is I ask the guest that's been on to choose a piece of music or a song that means a lot to you. And the reason I ask it is because when this is all edited, the world's ready to listen to me and you talk all things I Am Monsters and Hellraiser and everything else. There's going to be a choice of song that will be played. And the reason I ask it, not just because I love music and it's my life, I also love the reason why you think that came to you before any other song.
I did have to struggle because I don't listen to my husband Craig. is a huge ABBA fan. And recently I've been listening to the Visitors album a lot whilst I'm doing stuff that doesn't, because a lot of writers, creators have playlists. James Moran, who's a film screenwriter, puts together playlists with words. I can't listen to music that has words in it if I'm trying to write fiction.
No.
My mind just I find myself writing the lyrics when I also have a hearing difficulty. So I actually, you were talking about the albums and seeing the lyrics printed out. That's mostly how I learn songs because it's, yeah, it's called cocktail party syndrome. It means I have difficulty distinguishing words in songs. But so the song that eventually came to us, like, well, is the most, and it's such an obvious choice, but there is a reason. It's Christopher Young's theme to Hellraiser. And the reason I'm choosing it is because I've discussed how much Hellraiser means to me,
Yeah, of course.
and obviously in my life, and what Chatterer obviously means to people as well, which I think I've only come to appreciate more, and particularly appreciated it watching a YouTube video, an interview with the guys who did the makeup of Chatterer on the Hulu. And they said, well, why did you kill Chatterer? I said, because he's so loved. We wanted to up the stakes, which it's only Pinhead and Chatterer, or a version of Chatterer,
Yeah.
who come from every film. Chatterer has appeared in, if you count the Chatterer dog, there is a Chatterer in every film.
Yeah.
Something like that. Anyway, come back to the reason for the and is that,
Choice of music, yeah.
yeah, we've got to kill off somebody. We've got to kill off somebody who the audience is going to care about immediately, and that's going to be Chatterer. And it's like, yeah, it's fine. I get it. I get it now. Because I was like, they've killed off Chatterer again. When I originally thought about it, and it was like, oh no, this is such a mark of respect. It's like, oh, thank you. The reason I'm choosing it is, and why it's so important to me, is I mentioned I wrote Hellraiser comics.
Yeah.
And the first thing I did whenever I was writing a Hellraiser comic was put on the theme to Hellraiser. The moment I hear those opening beats, da, 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 da,
Oh,
da,
I'm getting chills now.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like, I'm back. I'm in
Yeah.
the world of Hellraiser. I know where I am, and I've got that creative part of, I've got that creative world in my head, and I can summon it. And I kind of knew this, but there was a panel in America, and Christopher Young was present. And so Christopher Young was on the stage with all our Cenobites, and one of the things Doug said was, Christopher, I just have to say, whenever I did Pinhead in the 8 films that I did, the first thing during the makeup process was Hellraiser goes on. He said, and that's how I find Pinhead every
Wow.
time. And it's just like, and then I was able to share my story as well. And
That's the perfect end
yes,
to today, yeah.
yes, that's it. So that is Hellraiser, and that is why.
Thank you so much for your time. I think this might be one of my longest interviews I've ever done. Normally the 45 minutes, and it's
Oh, I'm
like, okay,
sorry.
no, it's a good thing because I feel like at the same time, we've only just scratched the surface. I'm like, I could have done this for another 3 or 4 hours.
Sorry, I have never used one word when 10 will do. Um,
It's fascinating. I'm not
thank you.
editing any of it. I've absolutely loved today. I'm genuinely, you can probably see I'm smiling away. I'm going to be buying books,
Good.
watching Hellraiser tonight, discovering new
I'm going to be watching the
artists.
documentary. I could watch the
Yes.
documentary.
How good is that?
Because I had, whenever I Googled it in the past, it had not come up. So I'm thinking it may have
It'd be
come up.
something spooky if I bet now if you look into it, it like came on yesterday or
But
something
also, yes,
freaky.
yes. But I am so pleased because I have been after this for such a
Well, I'm going
long.
to get myself that edition. I think, like yourself, for the listeners that can't see, it's a big, thick, huge hardback edition, and I'm going to
Yeah.
treat myself because there's no other way to discover, is it,
No,
and fall in love.
no.
So,
I did buy them one. There are 2 volumes. I did buy
yeah.
one at a time. I think I got one given a Christmas present, and then I treated myself to the second one later on.
Oh, maybe I get the second one for Christmas. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. But I
Thank
wish you all the luck with I Am Monsters.
you,
I can't wait to see people's responses. I hope it
Mark.
sells so
Yeah.
well. I hope all the limited editions, collector's editions go straight away because obviously they're signed as well. And
Yes,
those are the things that once they're gone, they're gone. People kind of don't realize that they are limited. There's a
yes,
reason why. So
yes.
I wish you all the best with this, and I hope
Thank
that
you.
our paths will cross. I can't believe they haven't till now, really. So I'm
Right.
looking forward to the day I can buy you a drink at Fright Fest, or I see you at a convention, and I'll make sure I come and say hello.
Thank you very much. I look forward to it, Mark.
So there's my interview with me and Nicholas Vince. As you could hear, we hit it off straight away. He's cost me quite a lot of money because I'm going to go and buy a few books after listening to that interview back. But it was all worth it, and I think Nicholas is truly one of the best people in horror. So great to talk to, so insightful, so inspiring, and one of my favourite guests that I've ever had on Mark and Me. You heard us on today's interview talking all about his brand new Blu-ray, I Am Monsters. You can literally go on his website and order this now, and it is something that you definitely need as part of your collection. They have this numbered slipcover edition which has a signed sleeve. It's region free so people all over the world can check it out. It's got the amazing artwork from Graham Humphreys, and it's just a set that everyone should have in their collection. The extras, the conversations, the bonus features, it's something you're absolutely going to fall in love with. So I think you should all go and treat yourself, and then let me know what you think to this incredible film. I also want to say a massive thanks now to Nicholas for taking the time to come on the podcast. He's a very busy man and I really appreciate his time. And as I said at the start of today's interview, it will not be long until Nicholas returns because I know there's so much more that we can talk about, and I'm so grateful for his time. Also, guys, if you've enjoyed today's episode and you're a fan of horror or Hellraiser or any of the stuff we talked about, why not share it? I know horror is such a big thing on Instagram, so many fans of horror that would love to hear this interview, especially being fans of Hellraiser. So if you're listening and you like today's interview, why not hit the share button on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok? Any way you can spread the name about Mark and Me is much appreciated. And I also do have all the links on markandme.com to make it so much simpler for you guys at home. Also, I do have a Patreon account. This basically helps me pay for the podcast to be on stuff like Spotify, Podomatic, Apple Podcasts, and also travel the country so I can go out and do these interviews for you backstage at gigs or festivals. It all costs money, so any support that comes via Ko-fi or on Patreon really goes a long way. And again, all the links are on markandme.com, and I really do need that support, because this podcast right now is my full-time job and I'm loving what I do, but I do need that support to sustain it. Before I go, let's give a shout out to the other podcast sponsor, Richer Sounds. If you want to watch stuff like I Am Monsters on a brilliant 4K TV, then why not go to any of their shops on the high street or visit richersounds.com, and they will not be beaten on price and have the best stuff out there for audio and visual gear. So please go and do that, because those guys support the podcast and I want to support Richer Sounds as much as I can. It's really getting close now to the big episode 400. It's literally in touching distance. I can promise you now there's 3 amazing episodes coming up before we hit that big 400. So until then, look after yourself, take care, and I'll speak to you all very soon.